Dan, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Joe, it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for all that you do.
Yes, sir. So let's begin our adventure into your work by asking you this. 5 years ago, the pandemic changed our lives. How did you get through it? How did it change you?
Yeah, during the pandemic, the I was running an in-person training company. And so the very first thing we did is we had to switch all of our existing courses from live to remote. Uh, we were still delivering the classes live, but through Zoom. And this, was back when Zoom wasn't the ubiquitous force that it is today. And that fortunately was a pretty quick flip to switch. Um, Switch to flip. But then the trick was all the other courses that we had coming up that we had to cancel and then reimagine as online courses and the competitive nature of that. And anyway, long story short is we were down to a couple $1,000s in the bank, and I was wondering, am I going to be able to survive this? And I feel like one of the signature experiences of any entrepreneur is wondering how the heck they're going to hit payroll, and just the incredible fear and pain that comes with that realization that you don't have enough money in the bank to pay your people. And it was right when that happened when one of my employees, this wonderful marketer named Lilia, came to me and she said, Dan, we teach small businesses how to market themselves more effectively by using their personal story. And I know that we're struggling, but they are too. And so we would like to put out a free weekly masterclass on marketing that we can give to our community to help them through this moment. And I said, Lilia, it's a really nice idea, but we don't have any money in the bank and the business is failing. And so, but she just was persistent, and ultimately, I leaned into this idea of giving back. And, long story short is we found our way through that cash crunch. And then that masterclass series ended up becoming the foundation of the business. We won multiple national awards for it. And we came through that a much stronger business. We had clients in 6 different continents. And so the real lesson to me was the best way to get is to give.
Yeah.
And it was a profound experience.
So let me ask you this. If I put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day right now, and one of the kids wanted to get a handle on what you do for a living, how would you answer them? How would you explain your job?
Yeah. So every business, little guys, is has a human behind it. There is some animating force, some person who created this business and put it out in the world. And what I do for a living is I help business owners identify, describe, and use that as a way to attract their ideal customer and their ideal employee to their business. So I teach business owners how to tell stories, true stories, about why they do what they do and why it matters.
When you were 12 years old and you were in that seat, what did you want to do? What was your dream job?
So I would add a few years to that. When I was 16 was when I kind of discovered my first professional passion, and I was a junior in high school, and I was assigned to take a class in journalism. And the one of the very first assignments I took on was very personal to me. Back when I was 12, I was selling blow pops for a quarter a piece and making a ton of money. And I was a very kind of middle class person in a very wealthy suburb of Philadelphia. And I was filled, my classmates were all the sons and daughters of lawyers and doctors. And they used to call me the richest poor kid they knew because I always had pocket money, like $1 bills. Anyway, one day I go to gym class and I come back after gym class and my wallet has been emptied of its 20s. And I remember every 20 I would get because it took a lot of blow pops to get to $20. And so I'm like, where did my money go? And then I started asking around and I realized a lot of people had their money stolen in the locked locker rooms during gym class. Long story short is I published one of my very first stories was a campus-wide survey and an expose on this theft ring. And I can't take credit for identifying it, but a few days later, the head of campus security was fired, and it became clear that he was the head of campus security was the one who was rifling through our wallets while we were in gym class and taking our larger bills.
Wow. So what
And
was
that
it?
just got me hooked onto being a journalist. And then I spent the first half of my career pursuing that.
So you got on some pretty large stages in journalism. What what was it like to be at that level, to do that? I mean, did you always feel like you were pinching yourself, you were living the dream? What was it like to be at that caliber?
Well, so I worked for PBS and NPR, the Washington Post, the Miami Herald. I had a really blessed and kind of gold-plated career. And I would say there were a couple things. Number one, you know, journalists by nature are very competitive. And I never really bought into that culture, but I did feel, that competitiveness. People were like, "Who's going to be on the front page tomorrow?" And so I never felt super comfortable. I think all of us feel in journalism a little uneasy, and recognize that everything we have can be snatched away from us, as it was to me 15 years into my career. I think the other piece was there are a lot of really interesting people who are journalists, and they're kind of often a bit narcissistic. It's really about them, and their especially in broadcast. Um, and I never really bought into that. It was always much more about me, and the people that I met. And so when I did lose it all, I was the news director at a local NPR station. I got fired deservedly for being really hubristic, egotistical, arrogant. But I never let go of that love of story, of true story, of authentic story. And that curiosity that I took from journalism, I brought into the work that I've done ever since, which is business storytelling. And going into curiosity with like, this is an incredibly interesting business and business owner. And I would meet these business owners as we were training them in marketing. And then I would get like curious about them and start asking them questions. And they would have these amazing stories of how they started up their business and everything they had to overcome and why they did it. And they would sometimes talk about their families. And then I would go to their website. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Joe, but it was like de-peopled. It was just like a description of a product or service with, generic photos from that were clearly, from stock images. And I just felt like, wow, they are missing something really critical here. And so I applied my journalistic skill set to telling their story. And it was in there that I really found this methodology that I call story-driven growth.
Well, and I think that's one of the things about what I try to do on my series is kind of put a face to that whole business, a personality to it, because it just illuminates what you're doing in such a more magnanimous way. Even with you, you know, your background and how you've kind of married this world of business and journalism in together. And I'm curious on that path, what was the first really big story that you covered that may have been difficult, but you look back and you think that really made you grow into this role, not only as a journalist, but as a storyteller for businesses?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's stories from my journalism career that were profoundly impactful on me, and I would say probably the most impactful as a journalist were some of the when I worked for the NPR show Marketplace. I
Yeah.
covered Latin America, and the stories I told were about the flow of money and people across borders. And so I really tried to humanize money. There were people who would emigrate to the United States and then send money home, right? And so one of the stories I told was about this small town in rural El Salvador called Chinameca, this little tiny town that had sent dozens and dozens of their sons to go be construction workers in Virginia, just outside of DC. And I told the story of Paco, one of them, who had started his own construction company, and how he had hired many of these young men from Chinameca, from El Salvador, to work with him, and how they were all sending money back home to Chinameca, and how Chinameca, which had been a dying little town, now had a renovated church. And he was building, Paco was building a home to retire to. And it was just this incredible story of, Fairfax, Virginia and Chinameca, and how they were connected by this group of people and these links that money made possible. And that humanizing of what can be a very um, challenging debate over immigration. I mean, this was, in a different era, of
Yeah.
course. This was when it wasn't quite so politicized, but that was like really impactful to me. And I took that, the nugget of that idea, which is if you can humanize something as sometimes inhuman as money, and remittances, they call it, that sort of money they send home, and you can give it a face. Um, why can't we do the same thing for these businesses in our community? And
Yeah.
so that one of the most just profound examples when I knew I was onto something really big happened when I was speaking to the owner of a shoe store. And the shoe store, his name is Byron Kibbert. And Byron owns a shoe store near Miami called the Runner's High. And when you meet Byron, he's like a marathoner. He's in incredible shape, and it's called the Runner's High. So you're assuming it's like a Nike style, elite running store. And then I walk in, and it's literally filled with old folks. And I said, Byron, I call it my spider sense. Like, you just sniff story if you've been doing it for long enough. So I sniffed out there's something interesting happening here. So I'm like, Byron, this place is filled with old people. I thought you were an elite running store. He's like, oh, no, no, we're a comfort shoe store.
Wow.
Comfort shoes? What do you mean? He's like, well, and I asked him like, where did that idea even come from to run a comfort shoe store? And he started telling the story of his mother, who had been dead for 27 years, but when she was alive, she was an Avon lady, and she had multiple sclerosis, and he would help her load her wheelchair into the back of her car so she could do house calls, and she was the number one Avon lady in South Florida. And he said that she had never in her life had a comfortable pair of shoes.
Wow.
And he said that I've dedicated this business to helping people have what my mother never had.
Wow.
And it's like he had not, until that moment, connected his mother and his experiences, searing experiences as a young man, seeing her in pain, with what had kept him going for 35 years running this shoe store. And he said at the end of the interview, I know my mom is looking down on heaven from heaven and is proud of me.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
And Joe, it becomes addictive, honestly. Like when you have enough interviews with these purpose-driven entrepreneurs who are doing things sometimes unconsciously that are rooted in deep childhood trauma or childhood examples, and you help them surface that and then tell that story to make their business more sustainable and grow faster. It's my life's work, and I love it.
So, who's been your hero, journalistically or otherwise? Who's been your inspiration to find this kind of world between journalism and business storytelling?
So I have two heroes. They're both of my grandfathers. One of my grandfathers was a coach in La Liga in Spain. So my dad's a Spanish immigrant, came here more or less penniless and without a high school, without a college degree. He and kind of built this amazing life for me and my sister. And his father was a professional soccer coach, and a pretty famous dude in Spain, but then who lost everything when he took an entrepreneurial venture and put the family's inheritance into it, and it failed. It was a neon sign company, and it was maybe not a bad idea, but he was not a my grandfather was not a great businessman.
Yeah.
He was an amazing soccer player and coach. So he's my hero because of the heights that he hit in soccer, and he's also a bit of a cautionary tale of the perils of entrepreneurship. And then on the other side, my grandfather, on my mother's side, Henry Marcus, was a teacher of physics at the second oldest public high school in the United States, Central High School. And so between coaching and teaching, that is my family business. That is what my sister and my mother and my aunts and cousins, all of us are coaches and teachers. And so, I was a journalist, which was kind of really unusual, but I always found myself being drawn, even as a journalist, to teaching. And I would teach at the local university as an adjunct. And then when I had an opportunity to start my own business, I started a coaching and teaching company. And so now what I do is I coach and teach small businesses how to tell their story so that they can grow faster. And it's interesting. The work is fueled by these examples and this intergenerational interplay, and I can like feel the presence of my grandparents, my granddads in the work I do.
So, of all of these business ventures and all this career path that you've been on, what are you ultimately the proudest of at this point in your career?
Um, it's this is a little bit of a weird answer, but it's what's about to come is what I'm most proud of,
Yeah,
which is the book I'm writing.
yeah.
Um, when you're a journalist, you write a book to take your career to the next level. And I, but writing a book is hard and difficult and painful. And so I just kind of put it off when I was a journalist. And in fairness, never really found my topic. I never really found the topic that lit me up. And then I started doing this marketing training stuff largely to just learn it myself, and then stumbled on this methodology of story, telling your authentic personal story as a way to differentiate your business and help it grow. And it's really the marrying of the two careers I've had, one which was a career as a journalist, a journalistic storyteller, and the other one which was a career as a marketing trainer. And it feels in very many ways like the book that I'm writing, which is called Your Business is Your Story with Ben Bella Books, is the culmination of these two paths, is the big idea, is my potentially original contribution, to the space. And I'll be turning 50 in a year and a half from now, and the book will have been published. And I know that I will be so proud to have not only put out this idea and captured it in a medium that is going to last like a book, but also all of the businesses I've been able to help along the way.
So if you were to have a dream tonight, ran into a, 16-year-old version of you, and you could show them a book that's like a coffee table book of your life and everything you've done, and that version of you kind of looks up like confused, and you're like, that's what happened. That's my life. Would that version of you believe it?
Would you mind asking the question again?
Just kind of running into the younger version of you that would look
Yeah.
at your life story and see how it unfolded, the career that you've had, the life that you've led. Would that young version of you believe that it happened at this point?
I think the younger version of me, depending on when you caught me, the younger version of me would have not expected the struggle and the reinvention and the soul searching and just the challenges that I have faced as an adult. I was very blessed to have a very happy childhood with two parents that loved each other and a supportive environment. And I think I was as a result, a little unprepared for the challenges that were ahead. And I'd say of all the things I would tell that 16-year-old self that I'm most proud of is my resilience.
Yeah.
It's just I grit my teeth and I got through those moments with my integrity and my values intact.
The one thing about business is there's so many good stories out there from Bezos to Jobs, companies that present themselves in very eclectic, very good ways. They tell the story well. What's one of your favorite business stories?
Well, it's interesting. I've thought about these. So I studied in college um, the ancient literature of Greece and Rome and the gods, and I've come to see incredible parallels between the stories of Zeus and Poseidon and Athena and the modern gods, our corporate titans. And I have one of the things that made the gods from very different than the Judeo-Christian gods. The Greek gods, the Roman gods, were very flawed individuals. Like Zeus was, out philandering, bearing children left and right. He was a pouty, kind of, narcissistic personality. Like he was so similar, frankly, to Elon Musk. And so I enjoy that. I mean, here's what I'll tell you. Like, I've read a lot of those biographies about Steve Jobs, about Bezos, and I've come to realize that it's actually kind of hard sometimes to pull lessons from them
Yeah.
because they're often not good people. And I think there is something corrupting about the level of money and fame that they've achieved that makes me not aspire
Yeah.
to do what they've done. And so, where I have found my inspiration is in much smaller businesses that you've probably never heard of.
Hmm.
But one of my favorites is Zingerman's, which is an incredible business in Ann Arbor, Michigan, that has built a family of businesses, starting with a kind of deli that was the Zingerman's Deli is their first. And um, there's a whole movement of what we call small giants. These are companies that aim to be great rather than big. And it's in those small giants that I've met that I find my inspiration.
Yeah.
Um, if that's,
Yeah. I love that answer. Yeah, it makes
yeah.
total sense. So, Dan, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, everyone that gets your book, everyone that knows you, that you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think a I'm a person who gets deep fast. Um, and I do that because I'm genuinely curious about people and the world around me. And that boundarylessness, that fearlessness of asking the hard questions, made me a phenomenalist and has gotten me in all sorts of trouble in my personal life. Um, but in the end, I really love who I am. This kind of curious storyteller who loves unearthing people's sort of truest narratives and then helping them share those with the world. And I feel like I'm uniquely qualified to do this work. There's a Japanese concept called ikigai, and ikigai
Mhm.
is the intersection of four things: what you're the best in the world at, what you love to do, what you can make money doing, and what the world needs. And for most of my 20s and 30s, and all the way into my 40s, I did not know what my ikigai was, even though I was sort of searching for it. Like, what am I here for? And now in my 40s, I found it. And I'm really here to help find and share these stories of businesses that are in our communities that we treasure and that are endangered.
Yeah.
And that if we can build a community around the story of why they do what they do and why they matter, it is going to make it much more likely that they survive and continue to serve us. And I feel this kind of really humanizing force in business I mean, business can tend to get very dehumanized. That I hate that expression. It's not personal. I mean, tell that to a business owner. Come on, business is very personal.
Right.
And then, of course, in this AI age where we're kind of giving a lot of our work to bots, I, am on the side of humanizing our communications and then leveraging these AI tools to help us tell that story more effectively. So I just feel like I'm in the right spot, in the right moment, uniquely qualified to meet this moment, and I just feel on fire, to be honest, Joe.
I love it. So if anybody wants to get involved with the courses, the services for BizHack, reach out, any of the good business, your book, where do they go?
Yeah, so right now, we've been talking a lot about business storytelling, and the website I'd like them to go to is thestorydrivenbusiness.com.
Okay.
On there, they'll learn more about this methodology, and they'll even be given an opportunity to book a call with me. Anyone who's interested in the story-driven approach for their business, I'm happy to hop on a call with and tell them about what we do. And it's thestorydrivenbusiness.com.
Beautiful. I will put all that in the show notes. Dan, what a joy. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thanks, Joe. And if we have a